Take a breath and just pause for a second before you continue. If you are here right now, it does not feel like something random. It feels like something pulled you in quietly, without noise, without warning. Like something inside you was already looking for words like these even before you knew it. So stay here for a moment and do not rush away. Think about that one person. Let their face appear in your mind without forcing it. And notice what happens in your body when you do. That soft shift in your chest, that strange mix of warmth, pressure, memory, and silence all at once. That is not confusion. That is your inner world reacting to something it has not fully processed yet. And stay with me here because this is important. What you feel is not just surface emotion. It goes deeper than that. It reaches into parts of you that usually stay quiet. The parts that do not speak in words, but in sensation, in longing, in hesitation. And I want you to understand something clearly without overthinking it. You are not imagining the depth of this. You are not exaggerating it either. There are connections in life that do not feel light or simple. They feel heavy because they are touching old emotional patterns, old fears, old hopes you never fully let go of. And yes, it can feel exhausting to carry something like this inside your mind every single day, especially when nothing outside feels certain, but that does not make it meaningless. Keep watching because this goes deeper than you think. What makes this kind of bond feel so intense is not just the person, but what they activate inside you. It is like they press on hidden layers you usually keep under control. Things like fear of losing someone, fear of not being enough, fear of being too much. All of it starts to rise without warning. And suddenly your mind tries to find logic for something that is not fully logical. One part of you wants closeness, wants clarity, wants certainty. Another part pulls away because closeness feels risky, unfamiliar, too strong to hold without fear. And this is where most people get stuck. They think it is one-sided, or that someone is simply uninterested, or that love is missing. But what is actually happening is more complex. Two emotional patterns are colliding. One pushes forward because silence feels like loss. The other steps back because intensity feels like pressure. And in the middle of all this, both people are actually reacting from old emotional conditioning, not from the full truth of what they feel. So when you find yourself overthinking every silence, every delay, every shift in tone, it is not because you are weak. It is because your mind is trying to stabilize something that feels uncertain. And I need you to stay with this next part because it changes the entire meaning of what you are going through. Do not scroll away yet because the shift comes now. At some point, everything reaches a turning point, but it does not arrive loudly. It does not come with perfect closure or a clear explanation from the other person. It happens quietly inside you, a moment where you stop chasing meaning in every small sign and start returning back to yourself. Not because you stop caring overnight, but because you start noticing what this waiting is doing to your own peace. And slowly something shifts. You begin to understand that your value is not measured by how long you can wait, how much you can analyze, or how deeply you can hold on to uncertainty. You start choosing yourself in small ways first, then bigger ways later. And when that shift begins, the whole dynamic inside you changes. Not because you are forcing it, but because your energy is no longer coming from fear alone. And here is something most people never fully realize. Nothing you have felt has been wasted. Not the nights you stayed awake thinking, not the moments you felt hope rise again, not even the confusion. It all leaves an imprint inside you, shaping how you understand love, attachment, and yourself. So do not dismiss your experience as meaningless. Stay with this feeling for a moment longer, because what you are going through is not just about someone else. It is also about you learning to come back to yourself in a deeper way than before. Love is real and it moves through your life in a very active way, shaping you, stretching you, and slowly forming you into someone who can actually hold something meaningful when it finally arrives. And when you cry over something that feels right but also feels painful, that is not weakness. That is not fragility. That is your heart refusing to disconnect from something it still recognizes as important. Stay with this for a moment, because this part matters. Those tears are not a breakdown. They are proof that you did not shut down when it would have been easier to shut down. Most people, when things get confusing and emotionally heavy, slowly pull away. They protect themselves before the pain gets deeper. They build distance, they go cold, they stop caring little by little. It becomes a defense, and honestly, it would have been easy for you to do the same. You had every reason, every justification, every moment where you could have said, "This is too much," and walked away emotionally. Nobody would have blamed you for that. But you did not fully close off. You stayed open in a situation where closing would have been simpler. You stayed soft in a space where hardness would have protected you. And that is not something small. That is not something ordinary. In a world where detachment is often rewarded, your ability to still feel deeply is not a flaw. It is a rare strength. Keep watching this part, because it goes deeper than it looks. Loving someone through confusion, through silence, through distance, through moments where nothing makes sense, and still not becoming bitter. That is not something people easily fake. You either carry that depth or you don't. And what you carry inside you is not random. It is shaping where you are going, even if you cannot see it clearly yet. This is not about suffering endlessly. This is about what your heart is becoming through all of it. Now here is the shift you need to hear clearly. So stay with me and do not scroll away. What changes everything is not forcing an answer from the other person, and not trying harder, and not analyzing every detail again and again. The real shift happens when you slowly turn your attention back to yourself. Not in a dramatic way, not as punishment, not as a way of proving anything, but in a real and grounded way where your energy finally comes back to your own life. You start asking yourself something simple but powerful. What do I actually need right now? Not what they need, not what will fix the situation, not what action might change their mind. Just you. What do you need today, in this moment, in your own life? And keep watching, because this question changes things more than you expect. You start noticing the parts of your life that got quiet because your attention was fully pulled into one connection. The friendships you stopped nurturing, the goals you delayed, the small things that used to make you feel like yourself. And slowly you begin to bring them back. Not all at once, not perfectly, but step by step. You stop living in a narrow space where your entire emotional world revolves around one outcome. You widen your life again. You breathe into your own days again. And something inside you begins to feel less trapped, less suspended, less like everything depends on one person's response. This is not about pretending feelings are gone. It is about giving your life its full size back. And when that shift starts happening, something subtle changes in how you carry yourself. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, but it is real. You stop feeling like you are waiting for your life to begin. You stop feeling like your story is paused in the middle of uncertainty. You become more grounded in yourself, more present in your own moments. And that changes how everything around you feels, including how others respond to you. There is something powerful about a person who is no longer reaching from a place of fear, but standing from a place of inner balance. Not as a strategy, not as a trick, but as a natural result of coming back to yourself. And yes, the person you have been thinking about will feel that shift too, because energy in relationships always changes when one side stops operating from lack. But listen carefully. This is not about controlling an outcome. It is not about making someone come back or react in a certain way. That thinking will only pull you back into the same cycle. This is about you becoming whole in your own space again. And I also want to say this clearly because it is important. They are not the enemy in your story. They are not cold or careless in the simple way your mind sometimes wants to believe. What looks like distance is often something more complicated, something shaped by their own fears, their own experiences, their own way of protecting themselves without even fully understanding it. And that is not something you can fix for them. You cannot carry that for them. No matter how deeply you feel or how much you care, that part of their journey is theirs alone. And the moment you stop trying to hold what was never yours to hold, you begin to return to yourself in a much deeper way. That is their path to walk, not yours to carry. What you can do, the one real and powerful thing in your hands right now, is to stop letting their fear define your value, to refuse to take their confusion, their silence, their unresolved emotions, and turn it into a story about your own worth. Stay with this for a moment, because this is where everything begins to shift. You are not here to absorb someone else's emotional weight as proof that you are not enough. You are here to hold yourself with steady respect, with quiet strength, with a kind of inner dignity that does not collapse just because someone else is still figuring themselves out. And that changes everything, because when you stop abandoning yourself for the sake of being chosen, you start becoming someone who no longer needs to be completed by anyone. You become whole in your own presence, grounded, clear, present. And from that place, if this connection ever finds its way back into alignment, what it meets is not a broken version of you, shaped by waiting and uncertainty. It meets you as you truly are when you are not chasing, not shrinking, not hoping in fear. It meets you steady, complete, and fully there, Keep watching, because this is not just theory, this is transformation. Now imagine something for a moment. Close your eyes for a second if you can, and just picture a morning that feels different. Not forced, not imagined out of pressure, but naturally lighter. You wake up and something feels gone, something you had almost gotten used to carrying. That heaviness in your chest, that low background tension that followed you through so many days, it is not there in the same way anymore. And stay with this, because this is important. It is not gone because your feelings disappeared. It is not gone because you stopped caring. It is not gone because you shut yourself off or trained yourself to detach. It is gone because something inside you has finally found balance again, because what felt unresolved is no longer controlling your inner world. And now when you think of that person, it does not feel like a storm. It feels quieter, more settled. And maybe, just maybe, what once felt like confusion now feels like clarity starting to form. You can look at them in your mind, and instead of tension or uncertainty, there is space. Space where your nervous system is not constantly reacting. Space where your thoughts are not looping endlessly at night. Space where you are not trying to decode every silence or hidden meaning. And keep watching, because this part matters most. Imagine a kind of love where you are not constantly on alert, where you are not preparing for loss while trying to enjoy presence, where you are not questioning your worth in the middle of every quiet moment. A love where your mind is not always scanning for danger, where your heart is not always bracing for impact. That kind of love does not feel like pressure. It feels like relief, like finally being able to breathe fully after holding your breath for too long. And here is something you need to understand deeply, not just here. That kind of love is not created by convincing someone to stay or by proving yourself enough. It grows when two people meet each other without carrying all their fear into the same space. When they do not arrive as wounds looking for repair, but as individuals who have started learning how to stand on their own. That is not fantasy. That is what becomes possible when healing happens on both sides, even if the timing is not clear yet. And right now, what you are living through is part of your own transformation. It is shaping how you understand love, how you understand yourself, and how you will never again accept anything that makes you feel smaller than you are. So do not let this middle space convince you that nothing is happening. It is happening, even when it feels quiet, even when it feels uncertain. Every moment you choose yourself instead of spiraling into fear, you are building something stable inside your own life. And listen carefully, because this is where your power is. What is meant for you does not disappear just because the timing is unclear. And what is not aligned cannot stay just because you tried hard enough. So instead of chasing certainty outside yourself, start creating steadiness within yourself. That is the shift. That is the turning point. Not a chase, not a collapse, but a return to yourself. That is their road to walk, not something you can carry on your back. And what is actually in your hands right now is far more powerful than trying to control their timing or fix their confusion. It is the choice to not let their fear become the definition of your worth. To not take their distance, their silence, their mixed signals, and turn it into evidence that you are somehow less than enough. Stay with this carefully, because this is where people lose themselves without even noticing it. You are not here to absorb someone else's unresolved emotions as if they are instructions about who you are. You are here to hold yourself with a steady kind of respect, a quiet dignity that does not collapse just because someone else is still learning how to deal with their own inner world. And when you begin doing that, something inside you starts to shift, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly at first. You stop performing for love. You stop shrinking to fit uncertainty. You stop chasing clarity in places where clarity is not being offered, and you start becoming someone who stands in their own presence without apology, not cold, not detached, but grounded, whole in a way that does not depend on external validation to feel real. And listen carefully, because this part matters more than anything else. If this connection ever finds its way back into alignment, it will not meet a version of you shaped by waiting, or a version hollowed out by overthinking, or someone exhausted from trying to decode silence. It will meet you as you are when you are not abandoning yourself. And that changes the entire dynamic in ways you cannot force, only become. Keep watching, because this is not just emotional talk. This is transformation in motion. Now imagine something with me for a moment. Not as fantasy, but as a possible future your mind has not fully accepted yet. You wake up one morning and something feels different before you even think about it. There is no tightness sitting in your chest when you open your eyes. No heavy emotional pressure waiting for you the second you become conscious. And stay with this image, because this is important. It is not that your feelings disappeared. It is not that you stopped caring. It is not that you forced yourself into numbness or learned how to ignore what you feel. It is that your system is no longer in constant tension. Something inside you has settled. What once felt unresolved is no longer dominating your inner space. And when you think of that person, it is no longer a wave of confusion or anxiety. It is quieter now, more distant in a peaceful way, not a painful one. You can picture them without your nervous system reacting like something is at risk. No more spiraling at night. No more replaying conversations trying to find hidden meanings. No more trying to decode silence like it is a message you must solve to feel safe. And keep watching, because this is the real shift. You begin to experience what it feels like to not live inside emotional uncertainty every single day. You are no longer waiting for reassurance just to feel stable. You are no longer measuring your worth based on someone else's response time or emotional availability. Instead, your attention starts coming back to your own life, your own rhythm, your own presence, and slowly, life starts to feel wider again, not centered around one outcome, not trapped in one emotional storyline, but open, moving, alive in a way that belongs to you, not to the uncertainty of someone else. And here is where everything quietly changes without drama. You start realizing that what you were searching for outside yourself was something you had to rebuild inside yourself first. Not because love is not real, but because real love cannot grow in a space where you are constantly abandoning yourself to keep it alive. So you begin returning to yourself in small ways. Choosing your own peace over endless analysis, choosing your own stability over emotional guessing, choosing your own life over waiting in a pause state for someone else to decide the direction. And listen carefully here, because this is not about strategy or control. This is not about doing something to make someone react. This is about becoming someone who is no longer living from lack. And when that happens, your presence changes. You carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You stop needing to prove your value in invisible ways. And people feel that shift, even if they cannot explain it. Not because you are trying to influence anything, but because you are no longer leaking fear into every interaction. You are standing in something steadier. And from that place, if something real is meant to exist between you and that person, it can finally exist without distortion. Not rushed, not forced, not based on anxiety, but real. And if not, you still do not collapse because you are no longer built around one outcome. That is the real turning point. That is where you come back to yourself. That is their road to walk, and not something you were ever meant to carry for them. What is actually in your hands right now is far more important than trying to decode their silence or fix their confusion. It is the decision to stop letting someone else's fear become the measuring stick of your worth. To stop taking their distance, their inconsistency, their emotional uncertainty, and turning it inward like it says something about you. Stay with this, because this is where most people unconsciously lose themselves. You are not here to absorb what they have not healed and then translate it into self-doubt. You are here to hold yourself with a quiet, steady kind of respect that does not collapse just because someone else is still struggling with their own inner world. And when you begin to do that, something inside you starts to reorganize itself. It is not loud, it is not instant, but it is real. You stop chasing meaning in every pause. You stop bending yourself into different versions just to keep connection alive. You stop abandoning your own center just to stay emotionally close to someone who is still figuring themselves out. And slowly, you begin to stand in your own presence again. Not as a reaction to them, not as a defense, but as your natural state returning. Keep watching, because this is where the shift actually begins, even if it does not look dramatic on the outside. Now imagine something with me, but do not rush past it. Picture a morning where you wake up and the first thing you notice is not tension, not that familiar pressure sitting quietly in your chest before your thoughts even begin. Instead, there is space, there is calm. There is a kind of internal stillness that you have not fully experienced in a long time. And stay with this, because this is important. It is not that your emotions are gone. It is not that your care has disappeared. It is not that you forced yourself to detach or shut down what you feel. It is that your nervous system is no longer living in constant anticipation. That background noise of uncertainty is not running everything anymore. And when that happens, even the thought of that person changes. It is no longer a trigger. It is no longer a storm. It becomes something you can observe without being pulled under it. No more mental loops at night. No more replaying old conversations trying to extract certainty from uncertainty. No more reading between lines that were never meant to carry answers. And keep watching closely here, because this is where your experience of love starts to transform. You are no longer measuring your emotional safety by someone else's behavior. You are no longer placing your peace in their hands. Instead, your attention slowly returns home, back into your own routines, back into your own life, back into things that exist outside of waiting, outside of guessing, outside of emotional instability. And as this happens, life begins to feel wider again, not reduced to one storyline, not trapped in one connection, but open again, moving again, belonging to you again. And here is where the deeper truth quietly reveals itself. What you were searching for in them was never meant to replace what you needed to build within yourself first. Not because love is not real, but because real love cannot grow in a place where you are constantly disappearing from yourself to keep it alive. So you start returning, slowly, imperfectly, but intentionally. You start choosing your own clarity over emotional confusion. You start choosing your own peace over endless analysis. You start choosing your own life over waiting in emotional suspension. And listen carefully, because this is not about tactics or outcomes. This is not about doing something to make someone return or respond differently. This is about becoming someone who is no longer operating from lack. And when that shift happens, everything around you feels different. You carry yourself differently. You think differently. You stop needing to prove your value in quiet, invisible ways. And people feel that change, not because you are trying to influence them, but because you are no longer overflowing anxiety into every space you enter. You become steadier, more grounded, more present in yourself. And from that place, if something real is meant to exist between you and that person, it can exist without distortion, without fear, without constant emotional imbalance. And if it is not meant to, you still do not break, because your entire foundation is no longer built on one outcome. That is the real turning point. That is where you come back to yourself fully. That is their road to walk, and not something you were ever meant to carry on your shoulders. What you hold right now, what truly belongs to you in this moment, is something far more powerful than trying to decode their silence or fix what they have not yet figured out. It is the decision to stop allowing someone else's fear, confusion, or emotional distance to become the language you use to judge your own worth. To stop translating their inconsistency into something wrong about you. Stay with this, because this is the point where most people slowly lose themselves without even realizing it. You are not here to absorb someone else's unfinished emotional story and then turn it into self-doubt. You are here to remain with yourself, to stand with yourself, to hold yourself with a steady kind of respect that does not collapse just because someone else is still learning how to face their own inner world. And when you begin doing that, something subtle but very real starts to happen. You stop chasing clarity in places that are not offering it. You stop over-explaining your presence. You stop shrinking your emotions just to avoid losing connection. And you start returning to your natural state, where your energy is not built on fear, but on balance. Not on chasing, but on being. And keep watching closely, because this is where the real shift begins, even if nothing outside you has changed yet. Now, I want you to imagine something, but do not treat it like fantasy. Treat it like a version of you that already exists beneath all this noise. You wake up one morning and something feels different before your thoughts even start. There is no tightness sitting in your chest the moment consciousness returns. No emotional pressure waiting for you like it used to. And stay here, because this part matters.